Whether you decide to rent or buy your next property, here are some things to consider for both options. So when you're renting a property, it is the much more affordable option, especially when you consider the down payment, the less maintenance, and minus the property tax or maintenance fees that's required when living in that property. So whenever you do rent, you're only needing to give first and last month's rent as a deposit. Compare that to owning, where let's say you're taking out a mortgage on a bank or whatever it is, you're needing to put down 5 to 20% of that purchase price at minimum. And this is going to be required by any or most lenders here in the GTA. So just keep this in mind. Whenever you're looking to spend less, always know that renting is the cheaper option. And especially when you consider that you're not needing to change or help maintain the appliances or the mechanical systems in that property, as that's a responsibility of the landlord. And that can be a big expense down the road if you own that property and you're living there. Another thing to consider when it comes to renting is that there is a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to how long you can actually stay at that property. For example, when you own a property, that property is going to be lived in by you until you decide to sell, or the unfortunate decision of the bank needing to kick you out because you're not paying the mortgage. But that's controlled by you. When you're renting a property, the landlord here in the GTA, protected by the Landlord and Tenancy Board of Ontario, can have the decision of kicking you out at the end of your lease term if they decide that they want to move in, or have a family member move in, or sell to somebody who wants to live in that property themselves. This can be very stressful for tenants because they don't have control over those type of things happening. So whenever your lease term is finished and you've, let's say, stayed there for the full year that you've agreed to, or even 2 year, whatever you agreed on that contract, the landlord can either keep you month to month, either sign you to a new contract, which actually isn't allowed here in Ontario. You're actually automatically month to month, or they can actually kick you out for the reasons that I mentioned. And if you're a younger family, you have to consider this because being mobile is very difficult when you have younger children or a life that doesn't allow you to be mobile as somebody who's, let's say, single or living on their own. Regardless, whenever you're a tenant and this decision is being put in front of you, it can be very stressful and it can feel like a lot of bad things are happening to you during a short period of time, because now you have to find the next property that you're going to live in. And it's stressful enough to be knowing that you're not going to be living in your current property. But now if the market goes up, that can be prices that are less attainable for you compared to the rents that you're paying right now. You also have to remember that when you're paying the landlord, you're also relying on them paying their mortgage if they are borrowing money. So I say that because you're making your payments, but if they're not making theirs to the bank's not going to care about you. They care about that property. So if they're kicking out that owner from owning that property, they're kicking you out of that property as well. And that goes back to not having control over how long you're staying in that property, which can be very frustrating for tenants. You also have to remember that when you're renting, you're not allowed to be making changes within the property without getting permission from the landlord. So for example, even if you want to paint, you need to get permission from the landlord. It's not as easy as just painting the property because you think it'll look better. This is not your property to paint. This is not your property to upgrade. So these decisions must be approved by the landlord. So basically, however the condition is of that you're taking the property and whatever the finishes are, that's the type of property that you're gonna have to be living with unless the landlord gives you permission to make changes to that property. All in all, to make it simple, renting is better for people who are not sure about the type of property that they can see themselves in long term or the area. So for example, let's say that you're a single person who is wanting to rent because they're not sure about the type of property that they want to plant their feet in, or are unsure about the location until they've lived in the property long enough to know. Renting is the way better option because there's no fees that are involved if you decide to leave after that lease term of a year or 2 years, whatever you've agreed to. Versus when you own the property, the fees that come with breaking a mortgage or let's say wanting to sell is so extreme in comparison because you're paying land transfer tax when you buy. You're paying real estate fees to sell a property, these are fees that don't come with renting, and that can be a much more affordable option when deciding to rent because of this alone. So let's say you're getting divorced. Renting a property can be a way better option because maybe the situation that you're going to be living in for a short period isn't a long-term type of decision that you're planning on making. Renting can allow you to live in a property for a year, see how it is, or maybe save money along the way until you decide to live in that property that you can see yourself in longer term. If you do decide to rent, just remember that you don't have the benefit of being able to grow with the market if prices do continue to go up. As a renter, you're paying the same monthly payments and you're not getting the benefit of market growth with that property. But it also works the other way as well. If the market goes down, you're not affected. That payment you're making to the landlord is still the same. To put it simply, owning a property is the much more expensive option. Renting is the cheaper but also more mobile option to be able to allow you to take the time to figure out what you want longer term before having to commit financially to a property. I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions or need my expertise, feel free to reach out anytime. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and until next time.